Welcome back to the Hitchman Podcast, coming to you live from New York City. I got my two peeps here, Lucas and Jamie. We're on this journey, season 1 of talking about love, first dates, insecurities while dating, matchmaking, all of the things. And today we're going to talk about how we get from date 3 to 6 months to a long-term relationship. I'm going to ask these two a bunch of questions. I'm so excited to have them on. Are you guys nervous?
Very. Just kidding.
I want to know all your deepest dark secrets here today. And
nervous.
I really hope no one's watching.
They are watching. It's also Bills Sunday, so we got Jamie in our Bills gear because we
Go
love our
Bills.
Bills. Yes.
Go Bills. Lucas is a huge Bills fan.
I love the Bills.
Yes, I like recruit Bills fans, and I like make everyone I like to buy them jerseys, and so I'm gonna have to buy you a Bills jersey. So
I
then
know.
I'll have to find your player. Stephon Diggs would have been a great jersey for you, but he's now in the Houston Texans, and so he's off
right away. Yeah.
So, but I'll have to find you a player, and then we'll have to get you a jersey, which will be fun.
That. Matt Milano? Maybe.
No, that's mine. I have
okay,
Matt Milano's jersey.
Fine.
Okay, so we're going to kind of start this off with, we've been talking a lot about dating in New York City. And so I kind of want to start off with Jamie here because she is our New York City gal. Lucas is, been here now for a couple months. And so he's newer to the dating scene here. But I want to talk to Jamie about her dating experience here from like date 3 to date 6 to like 6 months and like kind of what it took to get to that 6-month year period. Because in the beginning, dating can be scary. We all go through it. And it's like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? How fast do I come on? How long do I, take to say I love you? And how did that progression kind of goes? And everyone has a different kind of take on it. So I want to ask you kind of what it was like dating here first from like that third date. And I want to like get your opinion.
So I'm immediately like, I am the worst person to ask because I think relationships, I've only had like one significant relationship in the city. And I'm like, ugh, I kind of just get the
ick.
Yeah. And you're like, I'm not proud of that one.
But
we tried. We'll gently hear. Cause it's, I don't want to take you guys through my trauma.
That's what we're here for.
But what I was thinking about, though, is what I guess what I can offer, because I've been in the city for a while now and I'm not 21, is a little bit of perspective because I'm now able to reflect back and be like, oh, these are kind of where I've slipped up, or this is kind of where I probably would do things a lot differently. And what I think is so interesting is this isn't just exclusive to New York, but it's definitely, exaggerated in New York, is this idea of when you're dating and in the city, you have so many choices, or it seems like you have so many choices, right? There's like literally millions of people within
hot
the palm of your hands.
Too.
Hot people that are like, you can swipe on, right?
Or just walk in the streets and see.
Or just walk in the streets. Everybody has that like subway crush where you're like, oh my gosh.
I was out in the West Village yesterday walking around and like people were just like vibing. And I was like, everyone's fits were out. And I was like, oh, these people are hot and sexy here in New York City.
I know, right? And so it can feel like, wow, I have so many choices, but I don't really have the time to actually get to know people. Like, I saw like this TikTok that was like talking about having crushes at work. And they're like, listen, he's not hot, he's work hot, which basically means like, out of all the people, you kind of picked, you let the market set the price. You picked the hottest guy that, of your workplace people. But what I think is really valuable about that is that half of my waking hours, if I'm working, half of my waking hours are spent with the people that I'm working with. And so I get the time around people to actually get into a relationship.
And get to know them.
And get to know them. So I guess that was my last relationship. Like, I had met somebody through work. Ooh, and I know.
Call HR.
Spicy. Please don't. But you get time with somebody in a pressure, non-romantic environment, and you get that opportunity to see what they're really like and see them in, the good, the bad, the ugly. And what happens is you start to really like them, right? And so it's not necessarily all the hot guys that you see, like you said, like you saw a bunch of hot people in the West Village and you're like, oh, they're cute, da 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 da, where your mind is just, or you're just like bouncing around from person to person to person. You actually are investing time, because you have to at work, and spending time with people. And so I don't know if I have a point here, but
No, but I think you just, I actually, I think this is really interesting because I was just home with my grandmother. I think I
Yeah.
told you guys about this. She was telling me that, like, we talked about my grandma a lot. They were married for 71 years. And she said that, like, I got to know him in school. Like, right. So, like,
Right.
they had the time to really get to know each other and be around each other. And, like, they didn't like each other right away, right? It wasn't like this, like, oh, they met and they just
Yes.
fell in love and they had known each other for a while before they started dating.
Yes.
And they got to just be in each other's presence. And, like, I think that's something that we don't do enough now in dating, right? We don't give people the chance. And we can bring Lucas in on this because now it's
Yeah.
been 4 weeks,
Yeah.
and you
Oh
had
my God.
you had that guy from, we talked about in the first podcast. You're now still seeing him.
I
Ooh.
am.
Yes, and you took a little break from him, but, like, I think now after like 4 weeks, you're getting to, like, know him better and better every time you see him.
Mm.
We also get more comfortable with each other. Like I would like randomly like call him up and we would just like,
To chat.
yeah, and we'd just chat and would be funny and would like tease each
Yeah.
other, but in like a just funny, like very
Yes.
normal, friendly way. Like there's not like you're
The
putting on like
pressure.
a persona to like impress the other person. It's like it has become like really like easy now,
And I think
because we
that's really,
have seen each other like a lot.
And so you start to like build more of like a friendship, or like you're building
I
that
think you're just
part.
more confident with the other
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
they actually like you, so
Yeah.
like you don't really have to put up a persona anymore. So now we're just getting to know each other like
Yes.
in a deeper sense of like asking fun questions and not being ashamed of like replying
Yeah.
in a really like real way.
Yeah.
and
Because
I
we
think the
just
interesting thing about this too is, like, we talked about this, and this is kind of what we're talking about, is how we get from, like, date 1 to 6 months to 1 year. I think what you've really done is give this guy a chance, right? And I think
Yes.
you took a little bit, like, in the
Yeah.
beginning, you were a little bit like, I don't know if I'm going to see him again. I don't know. But it's this same idea too. And it's like, when dating, if we go on one date and it's not like the perfect first date, a lot of times you don't give that person the second date.
Yes.
And then the second date turns into a third date. And then by the third or fourth date, you really are getting to know that person, 4 weeks now, or however long, it's been. And by that time, you really know them more than just that first, like, awkward meeting sometimes that first dates are. And you're nervous. And, like we talked about, insecure a little bit. And, like, I dealt with that when I was dating, of, like, kind of putting on a little bit of, like, a show rather than just, like, being myself. And I think that's what you learn kind of, 4 weeks in, or a year-long relationship, or, a 6 or 7 year long relationship, or 71 years. It's like you really get to know that person on a different level, which makes you appreciate them, not just about the physical things, not about the sex, but it's like, oh, I actually like spending time with that person. Like, I wanted them to be in the same room as me. Like, and when they're not with me, I miss them.
Yeah. I agree. And I just like or opportunities for those things to happen. And that's what I think is tough sometimes about living in New York City. A lot of people work really long hours and they don't have a lot of time. So even dating wise, it feels like a lot of relationships can be very transactional, not like in like
Yeah, of course.
sexual
Yeah.
transactions, but sometimes,
Sometimes that's how they start.
but that your interactions with people are usually like pretty short, right? You're like, oh, I know this person, da da da, and like, and even in the dating sense, you're like, it can be so intense because we're on a date and we're,
Like you want to be sexy and you want to like it's like
Yes.
the moment,
Yeah,
right? But you can't really like let loose because you're like under so much
Yeah.
pressure.
Right.
Because well, you have to wake up early tomorrow and like
Right.
and it's the weekend and you maybe want to like hang out with your friends. It's
And so you're deciding in that like 90 minutes, you're
Mhm.
like, do I really like them? But you're seeing them in kind of like a higher pressure
for
situation,
sure,
right?
yeah.
And so I think, like, going back to your like what gets you there, I think the more that we can have longer interactions with people, whether that's, like, I know a thing right now, people are like joining run clubs and, some type of community situation, because that's what it was like when your grandparents were growing up, right? Like they
100%.
were in school together, you were in some sort of community based thing. And I just think it's a great opportunity. If somebody wants to start a club right now, whatever it is, like a chess club, or
Oh
I
my
probably won't join a chess club, but something, I think we are going to see we're going to see a resurgence of this.
Yeah, because I think it's the idea too of building community, right? And like I think that's something that's really beautiful about it. And I think now what happens sometimes is we, like you said before, we're working so much and we don't take the time and the energy to really just sit in each other's presence. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm going to see this person for 45 minutes or an hour and a half, and then it's like goodbye.
Totally.
And I think it's interesting. I was just talking to my client about this, and I was like, why don't you guys start going on dates that aren't so much pressure? Right? Like go on a date that you just like go walk and grab a coffee, or
Yes.
like it doesn't have to be this serious sitting down like at a bar and having drinks or having dinner, or walk on the West Side Highway, or go for a drive and then do something like a hike, or do something that's not so like sitting in front of each other like one on one, because then I think that the quirky things when you're just like being less serious come out. And then
Yes.
that's really when you get to know people a little bit more.
My new favorite date is to ask people to go on a walk with me with my dog. That's
Oh my
like
God, I
it.
love Bieber.
I know. My dog is
No,
cute.
what kind of dog do you have?
I talk about him too much. I'm going to keep this short. He's a little mini golden doodle.
Oh,
He's basically a GMO. We don't, he's small. He's like
Orange.
19 pounds, but he's so cute.
I love
I know,
dogs.
me too.
So the next
Anyway.
thing that I want to kind of talk about here is like that idea of, quality time. I think that's really what we're talking
Yeah.
about, is giving people a chance and spending more time one-on-one with them or in group settings, or just kind of getting to know them and giving them a chance. And then my next thing I think we have to talk about in that 6 to year month mark, when you're really getting to know someone, it's compromise. Not every person that you're going to date, you're going to like everything about them, right? And I think we talked about this earlier in a couple episodes ago. It's finding the things that are most important to you. What are the
Right.
things that you're looking for in a partner, and what are the qualities that are most important to you? And those are the things you really have to hone in on. But then also it's the idea of having compromise, of being like, oh, I hate the way that she does this, or I hate the way that she chews her gum, or I hate the way that she, or takes too long to get ready, right? Those are things that sometimes you just have to be able to compromise on.
Yeah.
And give people the time and energy. So I kind of wanted you guys to talk a little bit about, like, in your relationships, the compromise that you kind of had to give in that 6 month mark of being like,
yes.
what really helped you
Yeah.
learn those things about yourself and the relationship.
Yeah, as you just said, like it's a time where you really get to know the other person, and
And you weren't willing to compromise.
no, I'm so willing to compromise.
You were like, this is
but
it.
you will
I'm
remark,
out.
they're like remarks that you were like, oh yeah, as you said, like you actually don't like the person's like routine in that
Yes.
morning, or how they kind of
Leave
do
a mess.
certain things or leave a mess or whatever.
Yes.
So I'll just be the one cleaning up behind them.
Well, you are. I mean, you are
Like,
really are a caretaker,
they're
right?
just
And I
like,
think that.
clean it up.
Are you a caretaker? You're like, I need it clean.
I need
and-
it clean. Yeah, I will be like the caretaker in that sense. But yeah, I would usually, probably it's a bad trait of mine. Like I would keep it in and wait till
Wait till there's a blow up.
yeah, wait till the blow up.
I've been working on that as well. I think we've been talking about this idea of like when something's bothering me, sharing it right away rather than like letting it, build up inside of me, and then like 2
Yeah.
weeks go by and then I, have a couple tequilas and I go off. I've been working on trying to be more like transparent and honest early on before things start to really like build up inside. And I think that's something in my relationship I've had to really work on. And in the past, because that's kind of been my thing. And then those big blow ups, you kind of like, it's hard to recover sometimes from that, because it's like you say things that you don't actually mean, but in that like heat of the moment, you really go in on someone and you're
Right.
Yeah. And I like, for me, like I said, I'm very type A. Like, I think that's the reason a lot of my clients love me, because I'm like very direct. I'm like, let's go. But sometimes in a relationship, it's too much. And it's like, I go in too hard on people. And I can be a little bit, that's like kind of growing up being an athlete and like being criticized a lot growing up by my mom. I love her to death, but like she was very critical on me in sports and that idea and my coaches. So in my relationships, I'm trying to get better at not being so like, have that moment where I just snap and just like share things on a daily basis of like, hey, I don't love the way you do this, or I don't love the way you do that, or how can I be better to you
Mm-hmm.
and help you along to kind of fix these things in our relationship?
Totally. I think it is about choosing your battles, right? And choosing like what's really important. But to back to your original question, I think I'm thinking about a relationship that I had for a few years, and I had to make a lot of compromises. But what and he made a lot of compromises for me. I think we were really committed to each other. We were really committed to the relationship. And so when things got hard, we were just kind of like, all right, like, let's talk about it. And I felt like what allowed me to compromise, like, I knew I drove him nuts. I am not like, how do I say this?
Chill.
No, it's a way. No, like I very, can be very Virgo and like on
Mm-hmm.
top of things, but also there is this huge side of me that is very like, not aware of your surroundings. I'm like missing my keys. I'm like, just a little ADHD all over the place, right?
Oh my
Not
God.
everyone
I
loves
love that.
that,
I love this.
right?
I
And so
love this quality about you.
sometimes I need to be like, not sometimes. I need to be taken care of. Like
Yeah.
I need someone. I'm a very much a caretaker, but also like, magically, I have gotten through life. Like I've had boyfriends be like, I don't know how you survive because I'm clumsy. I don't know. Sometimes I'm just
Well, you have
not
a
aware.
great heart. I think that's like the thing. And I think as
You're
I'm
like,
getting to
we know
well,
you're
no,
clumsy. Like,
as getting to know you better and better, and our relationship is now changing
bless
because
her
we're like
heart.
we're working together, right? And Hitchman, we're doing the podcast, like, and that's the
Yeah.
thing, the fun thing I think that we've kind of been talking about. Me and Lucas talked about it. It's like a whole different dimension to our friendship and our
Right.
relationship by doing this podcast together and kind of sharing these things with
Yes.
our the people that are listening and sharing these deep emotions that we have. That's really, you're such a great person. You have such a
You're
great
so
heart.
sweet. Yeah.
You are scatterbrained sometimes. You're all over the place. And like
Yeah.
with the Hitchman, I'm like, girl, let's lock it in.
Yeah.
But that's also the reason I think that you're like, that's I think one of your best qualities is that you're fun and you're silly and you're like a little like
Yeah.
all over the place. And that kind of makes you funny. Right. And
Yeah.
I think, and you then make
I'm-
fun of yourself for it.
Totally.
Right? And I think
Like I
that's-
know I'm like quirky and everything like that, but a lot of people see me like sometimes on the outside and I used to be in banking and they'd be like, "Oh, this girl's like boss girl," and then they see me and they're not prepared for the chaos that I am. I'm like, "Do not look inside of my purse. Do not look. It is chaos in there. My apartment will be so clean and so nice. Don't look in my purse because it's absolutely crazy." And so like I was with people that were not like that. I was with people that were probably a little bit more like you, Lucas. Who were just a lot more
I'm also German,
organized.
so
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
probably the
exactly.
German in me.
But I knew that rubbed my partner the wrong way. But we had to be like, okay, like this is who I am.
yeah,
This
that comes with
probably
Jamie.
isn't going to change. Like I
Yeah.
would love for that change. I would love to be much more organized and not lose my keys and da 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 da. But this is who I am. You're probably, if we go out together, you're going to have to hold on to my phone, not because I'm, some people hear that and they're like, oh, like, are you?
But I
To
think by
protect
you
against
being
cheating, but-
honest, right? I think
Yeah.
by you, and I think we talked about this before too, being like, hey, these are the things I'm really great at in a relationship.
Yes.
These are the things I need help with, and these are the things I kind of need in a partner. That also gives your partner the opportunity to step up to the plate, right?
Yeah.
I think like that's one thing I love about Lucas in the same sense that he is so like on top of it, and like he is my fashion. Like I love like that side of him that I can get his opinion and I can lean on him. And like in a relationship, I see that's who you are, right? You're reliable, and like I think the other beautiful thing, you've had a really cool life that you've kind of traveled around and you've lived in multiple different cities. And I think we talked about this on the last episode. You were like, I have no problem if my partner like says, hey, let's move here. Let's do
Yeah.
that. Right.
I
And
did
I
say
think
that.
that's like and I kind of want you to, kind of share your feelings behind that idea of like, kind of just being like, let's do it. Let's kind of leap into this and take that next step and kind of where that courage comes from or like where that and how that makes you feel when you do that.
I think it's also because I come from like a boarding school background, so I grew up with friends from all over the place. So
Right.
I've never had like a sense of like home anywhere, to be honest. I feel home anywhere where I have friends or where I feel comfortable and loved. And so the idea of like, or my statement of saying like, oh, I'd move for a partner, which is like pretty, I
Yeah.
don't know, people would say that you should,
Beautiful.
yeah, it's beautiful, but
Good point.
also there's people that would
They're like, oh my
don't
gosh.
ever
Yeah.
move for somebody. So I've actually moved for someone once,
Yeah.
and it did bite me in the ass. Is that the
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So we dated, and it became more serious actually. And so I was like, you know what? I want to spend more time with this person. I want to be in that person's city.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got my own place, moved over. At that point, we were like seeing each other for, I believe, 4 months. It was 4 months in. Um, and the first week was great. And
The first week. And then you're like,
the first week was great.
first
But there were
week.
no, like, going back to, like, there was no certain aches that I felt like I didn't like about the person, even living together. Like, I
I'm
felt
on
like,
the edge of my seat.
yeah, we were just like getting along with each other like very well, and we were like very honest. Um,
And then on the 8th day, what happened?
and then yeah, well, he figured that
I can't handle the waiting.
because I'm just like remember the situation. Well, like, he was really honest about another person coming back into his life that
Oh.
like he wasn't really sure about what his feelings were, and
Mm.
he didn't want to be unfair and sort of,
A ghost of the past.
yes,
Yeah.
and
He didn't want to be unfair to who?
probably like to the both of us. But I'm like also someone that will not get mad. Like, when he told me that, like, I was like, okay, like, fair enough. This is how you feel. I was obviously super upset. I was like crying, but also he was crying. Like, I could tell that he was like really going
Yes.
through it. Like, emotionally, he was really
Torn.
confused, yeah, and
Mhm.
torn. And I actually appreciate that he told me that. And so
He was honest.
he was honest, and like, he didn't even, it wasn't like a cheating situation. He said, we've been talking and it's just been on my mind and I don't know what
Mhm.
to do, and I feel bad being here in this apartment with
Mm.
you. And also gotten to know all of his friends, and then he just felt like it was better for him to like move out and be in his own space, and we basically broke up because of that.
On the
And
8th day?
kind of
Oh.
yeah, it was so annoying.
Well, was it a good city at least?
Yeah, it was a great
Okay.
city. Yeah, it was a beautiful city.
And one you haven't like lived in before too. I think you kind of like discovered a
Yeah.
whole different culture over
Yeah,
there
and
as
like,
well.
I've met his friends, and then his friends became sort of my friends, and they're actually like
Yes.
super nice and accommodating. And we're really mad with him as well.
This is when you came over to like right after this is LA, right? And we were like, let's move to LA. Let's get a house here. Was that close after that?
No, that was not close to that.
It was longer after that.
It was longer after that, yeah.
Oh. Well,
Okay.
But that was kind of like an experience I had. But again, like, I wasn't really mad. I actually
Are
thought it
you
was
still in the city right now that you moved
no,
to?
the apartment's just
No.
sitting there.
no,
I'm like, it was this apartment.
no. It's,
No.
it's been a while. I don't want to mention the city,
Yeah, yeah,
but
no,
No,
you don't.
no. I'm just
I know the
teasing
city,
you.
but I won't. Speak.
yeah,
I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you.
Okay, well, yeah, no, that I think
An
there's a side of that
experience,
you
too
know?
that you like. I
But by
appreciate
the way,
his
I just want
honesty.
to say,
Go ahead.
or I don't regret it. By the way, I don't regret doing it. I think that's the whole point of like moving.
Yes.
I've moved for this person, yes, and I never ever um I never held it against him. I never told him like
That's really nice.
F you because I did that because it was my choice.
Right.
Like, it was always my choice, and I will always stand my grounds for my actions, right? So I did it on my own. I decided to do it, so I will never hold it against the other person. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. I'm very cool with moving because it's my choice, and I will never like regret it because I wanted to.
Well, I think that's beautiful that you took the leap of faith,
Yeah.
right? You were like, I'm gonna give this a try,
yeah,
right? And I think there is luxury behind being able to do that, and not
Yes.
everyone can do that. But it's like the idea that you had, and I think we can kind of wrap this around the same idea of like shooting your shot, right?
Mhm.
You took that leap of faith. We
For
talked about that
sure.
with you, and like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like if you that fear of the unknown. Or like we don't do things because we're like I don't know what's gonna happen, but then sometimes like 10 years goes by and then you always are thinking like what happens if I would have done that.
Yeah, I don't want to live with that regret, like
Yeah.
not knowing what would have been if I didn't.
Right.
Because
And
love can be really scary, right? And relationships can be really scary 1 year down the road, 10 years down the road. Like there is that fear of unknown that we all kind of deal with sometimes. And I think this is going to be I have an interesting segue that I want you guys' opinion on, because I think in 2024, the idea of like people that have been in long-term relationships are starting to like open up their relationships
Mm,
in the gay world, in the straight world, in every world. And I think it's interesting that, like, I've been dealing with this with my clients and kind of talking through this.
yes.
I share very old school, values in that way of that, like, for me, I do not want to be in an open relationship. That would be something that I would feel uncomfortable with. I would be jealous
Yes.
with. I just wouldn't be okay with that. But I kind of want to get your guys' opinion on like how you feel about this new, way of doing open relationships.
Yeah, I don't know if it's so, I might be super controversial here. I don't know if it's so new. I think people are just, it's new in the sense of people are just being honest about it,
but is
right?
it
Or it's more
common?
public.
But is it
Yeah.
more common?
Yeah,
Have you
I do
dated?
think
Have you been in an experience where like you've dated someone that was in an open relationship?
yes, but I didn't know that.
Oh.
So I've been on a couple of dates where recently where I've gone on like a second and a third date
Mm-hmm.
and then they tell me that
Oh,
they're in an open relationship. And so that not
I
I'm
don't
not okay.
know.
But and they both, and maybe this is unique to New York. I don't want to scare anybody off, but they both kind of had the attitude of like, well, this is how things are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like,
Not for me.
just not for
So
me. Like
sad,
it's
yeah.
not for me. And but I mean, yeah, it's not for me. I don't know if that would make sense for my life. And it's just not my personality. And I love way too hard. When
Yeah,
I
same.
like love somebody, I'm like,
You wouldn't want to like share that person as well. Like,
yeah, and it's just not my deal. It's not my deal. But
Yeah, for
you?
me, it's kind of a deal breaker.
I think it's a
Oh, it's
deal
deal breaker.
breaker. It's.
Before we even start, it's deal breaker.
I mean, I've been through it as well. I've dated someone that was in a relationship,
Yes.
but date one that was mentioned, and I was fully aware of it. I knew who this person was. He's told me about his partner. They were also working together, so I was aware of
Yeah.
their situation and what I was getting into. And I don't know. I thought it was interesting to just experience. So at least now I can say that it's nothing I want to put
Right.
myself in or through again. Like I would never actually want to be in a relationship with my partner and open up to a third person or whatever that might look like. And me be the open relationship and have other people like kind of like
Mm-hmm.
sink in. Like it's so
But
toxic.
I mean, I do know people that have made a very strong case for why they think that's
I know.
for them and it works for them. I was, in a relationship with somebody and they cheated and it was kind of proposed to me like, well, what if I just have an open relationship? Like, what if we do this? And I was like, not for me. But I had people in my life who were literally being like, well, maybe that would work for you guys because you love this person so much. But I decided, and I really, I thought about it. It didn't take me that long, but I didn't think about it, like, this is something that I can't compromise on. Right? Like that's something that it was just.
I think it's an
it wasn't it
interesting
for
thing,
me.
like, with this matchmaking business that I have and kind of talking with clients about this. Like, for me, I don't believe in it. I don't think I think that there are scenarios that it works for people and that's great for them. It's not really part of my practice and kind of what our core values are at the Hitchman. And I think that's something that I've struggled with some of my clients that, they want to have that idea of an open relationship. And I'm like, I'm just not the right person to work with you on because I don't believe in it, right? I don't come from
I
that
just
like.
think it gets messy.
Yeah, it does.
But it really works for other people, guys. There's like
Yeah.
I've seen it where it just works out and it just works and they're like so happy in love and married
I know.
and
I
it just
know
Do you,
people
works.
do you
too.
think though that they
It just
actually are
works.
happy or they just say that they're happy because they want to keep that person?
I believe they really are happy.
Okay.
I really believe
I
they
know.
are happy.
I'm thinking of a couple of different couples that are in open relationships, and they're the one thing I will say that I do normally appreciate. I do appreciate the honesty
Mhm.
in the relationships. Like
Yes.
that is something I don't know. I do think that there's a brutal honesty, um, that yeah, that's good. But I don't know. It's just I couldn't do it. It's not for me.
Yeah, I thought it was just like an interesting topic to kind of bring up. I had a
Yeah.
client that I was just kind of talking to about this, and I kind of was like, weighing in on my opinion. And right, listen, everyone, their relationship has to work for you, right? And I
Yes.
think that's the thing about dating now in 2024 is like the rules are a little different than they used to be. We talk about the old school values that I kind of come from, and that's just how I kind of want to live my life, and I that's the way that I know. But it's just an interesting topic that I kind of want to get you guys'
Mm-hmm.
opinion on. So thank you for sharing in that sense. I think the next thing I kind of want to talk about, and like as we kind of close this up, is the idea of, that idea of really getting to know your partner other than just the sex, right? And I think that's what builds long-term relationships is the idea of building an emotional connection. And I think I talk about it, my parents and my grandparents, that idea of people that have been in long-term relationships like that and as someone that's been in long-term relationship, it's that idea of really having a strong emotional connection. And I think we don't always put enough time and energy into that, really, of like getting to know the person and the idea of like making your partner your best friend, right? And the idea of knowing things that and taking care of them in a way that also makes you feel good, but also makes them feel good. So
I
I kind of,
agree.
I want to kind of talk to you guys about that idea of like being like marrying and dating your best friend.
And I think it really ties in well with what gets you to the 6 months or the year-long relationship. It is that time. And this is why I know that there's a lot of talks, and especially I've heard a lot on a lot of different podcasts in New York, dating podcasts out of New York, where people, especially from a girl perspective, where they're like, when do you get intimate with somebody, right? There's lots of extremes, right? Some people are like, well, when you feel that it's right personally, you do it, and then some women have like very stark rules where they're like 5 dates, 3 dates, and the whole point of them trying to delay intimacy is to build that emotional connection. And I think that's true. And so for guys, I think if this would be my piece of advice for a guy, like there's a lot of guys in New York that are just here for a hookup. Like, let's be honest,
Bachelors.
true blue bachelors. But if you are a guy, especially that you really want to look for a relationship, like, do not, like, you be the one to not pressure her into having sex, because you actually have a better shot, right? And if you go back to the scenario of, your grandparents and the town that they grew up in, you have the opportunity to learn about somebody because you're around them all the time before it ever gets intimate. And that's really how you start to fall in love with somebody,
I think that's beautiful. I mean, I
you
think there's
know?
that. We talked about this. For me, by date 3, like there has to be a kiss. There has to be some sort of like, we have to
Right.
keep it sexy a little bit, right? It has to be, and I think it's finding that balance, right? Of like
Right.
openly communicating, of being like, hey, I'm ready. Hey, I'm not ready. But I think the thing about being in New York City, especially right now, is that there has to be a little bit of like sexiness early on. That kind of
But
that kind of keeps the fire burning.
I agree. I agree with that. But I've been known to cut something off because I feel a little bit, or I feel pressure that somebody wants to have sex, and I'm not there emotionally yet, or I don't feel like I know them well enough, or I'm kind of on the fence. So I feel like if there's too much of it, then it kind of forces me into a decision where I do cut something off early because I feel like I haven't, because I'm like, ugh, he just wants to have sex.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Lucas, what do you think about
I
this?
know.
I'm taking so much from what you're saying,
Oh, great.
yeah, with me after this podcast.
Oh, you're so cute.
No, honestly, like you've been saying so many things that I want to now implement into my dating life.
Oh,
Because even you saying joining a club and meeting new people, I think we've
yes.
spoken about that in a previous podcast. Because I want to meet outside of like the dating app too. And currently I don't work, so it's like I don't go to the office where I could potentially like meet
Mm-hmm.
um somebody, or I don't go to school where I could meet a
What do
classmate.
you mean?
And
You're working right now. I mean, you're now officially on the Hitchman podcast. So this is a
But you
job.
don't
for
have
sure.
you don't have like a regular
Yeah.
community
Yes,
that you're
yes.
getting to
And I miss
experience
that. I miss
people.
that. And so,
Yes.
especially to New York, I think um, for the next year, I would love to join a community where I can, potentially get to know new people. And I also said I want to create a new group of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and that potentially, might lead to getting to know someone romantically. But yes, I love going on a dating app, and I love hooking up. It's also like very common in the gay culture, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. But I'm trying to break that cycle of where I want to, like, I want to push as well the other person out to go on dates versus just
Mm.
meeting to like have sex.
Yeah.
So that'll be something that I would want to like do in the upcoming year. Just meet someone, go on actual dates,
You
and
can
get to
you
know
can
them
borrow my
emotional.
dog and
A
go
hundred
for
percent,
walks.
100%, 100%. I really should. But
Maybe you should start a group for the Hitchmen, and you can be the one to spearhead that of like a
oh,
little like social group for the
that
Hitchmen.
would be cute.
That would
Maybe
I
be
that
just
could be
want to
your
go
thing
on
when you
dates, and like I
you
think
want to meet
just
people in real life.
emotional connection is like so crucial to me, and so I want to get that checked before the sexual chemistry, comes into like place. So I think I
Mm-hmm.
definitely really do it. I think it makes so much sense to me. Like the things you've been saying just make sense to me. Like it's obvious that you can build a better base
Right.
foundation on getting to know someone emotionally first, and then kind of opening up sexually versus
Mm-hmm.
like the other way around. Of course, like people have like their own opinions on that, but I think of seeing it from, of course, I mostly like see guys just to have sex, and it has not found me anywhere. So I can like tell that, like, I guess,
Totally. You're like, look at the
yeah,
evidence. Where is this getting
yeah,
me?
I'm single.
Well, I think this is the idea too of like
Yeah,
it's you're having a dating strategy, right? And I think what you said, and like
Yes.
I would just want to say also, I love this moment that like you two are having together right now. Of like it just makes my heart so warm. Like me, and I love to like bring my people together. I love to mix my friends from all over the place. So that was a beautiful moment. So like thank you
Buffalo
guys
and Germany
again.
coming
Yeah.
together.
Thank you guys for coming on again. But also I think that's a really good point, right? It's like you're kind of this podcast has helped you, Lucas, also kind of think through things and talk about things and like change your dating strategy.
yeah, I wasn't as
Yeah.
vocal because I was really listening to you, and I was just like, damn,
Oh, you were just
like I'm a
waxing my car
phony
Jamie
over
is
now. I'm
here.
a
giving
I'm
phony
like,
now.
fact.
I'm like, girl, I need that advice. Like,
Well, I mean, that's the thing too.
yeah,
Jamie is, works with me at the Hitchman on like the
yes.
matchmaking side, and she's starting this journey as a matchmaker as well,
Mm-hmm.
which has been really fun. And I think because you have such, like we talked before, you have such an amazing heart, and you really do care about people. I think that's how we originally connected.
Yeah, you guys should just keep talking about
Yeah.
me.
Like, can we
keep
just do
telling
pep
me
talks
more.
before every
Tell
date I
me
go on?
more. Tell me more. No, I really appreciate that. No, and I think and a lot of it, I think, is just honestly experience as
yeah.
well. Because I haven't done it. I have not done things right. I'm single right now. Like, and not that getting married is the end all and be all, and
Hmm.
this is the season I'm in. But I've learned a lot from my mistakes, and now
Yeah.
looking back and saying like, oh, what really works. And that's why I was so happy that I met Jason. Jason was the first, but when I first met Jason, we really started talking about this, like the dating strategy. How is that working for you? I love Jason. That is his go-to. So how is that working for you?
That really
And
is your go-to.
it is, but
Right,
it's
because
true,
Yeah.
you have to
right?
check in sometimes of like
Yeah,
what's happening in my everyday life, and is the things I'm doing working? Are they not working?
right.
Being realistic with yourself in this
Yes,
dating game is like, am I being successful? Am I not being successful? And like we talk about this a lot. You have to have a strategy, right? You can't just
totally,
like throw spaghetti against the wall. I love that's my
totally.
favorite
I don't
like
have
little thing.
any strategy, dude.
But
Like,
But we're starting
you,
one. I
I'm
think you're
just
starting
like
to get one
winging
now,
it
right?
here.
but here's the Jason's voice rings in my
But see how
brain
that's
all
going
the
for me.
time. Yeah, exactly. But Jason's voice rings in my head all the time when I meet a guy and I'm like, oh, but I'm having, like he might not be marriage material, or he's probably not my husband, but like maybe I'm having so much fun right now or whatever. And Jason is always like, you know, in the back of my head, like, is this getting you what you want? Is
Hmm.
this getting you closer to what you say you want? And so it's really checking in with yourself and saying, are my actions aligning with what I'm saying that I want.
Amen.
If I am saying that I want to be married and have a family, we are not hanging around fuckboys, right? Like we're
Right.
not doing that, right?
And
And
I
they
think we
show
have
their
those
colors,
moments
right?
too, right, where you like are feeling a certain way, and so you just want to have that like intimacy in a different level, and I think that's
Totally.
okay. But I think it's also the idea of like being like, okay, I know what I'm doing right now, right? Just going on this date to have sex tonight is like I need that physical thing, and that's happened, right? We all have had those moments where it's like we know this is just a hookup to kind of let some steam off, but it's also then checking back in and being like, that's actually not what's gonna get me
It's not getting
where
me
I
what
want
I
to go.
want.
Like that's and at the Hitch when we talk a lot about like for me, there's good days and bad days, and there's this like roller coaster ride of love that we're all on. But the end goal always for me with my clients is getting them married or
Right.
finding them a life partner or
Right.
getting to that space. And you have to really put the time and energy into that, right? It
Right.
takes a lot of work
And
to.
if you don't start it now, there are so many people that are in New York City and leave New York once they get into their late 30s because they didn't make those decisions at a younger age. They're kind of like, oh, we'll put that off. We'll put that off. Then I'll get serious. Then I'll get serious. And then you're 38, 39 years old and you're like, oh, wait, I have to change my strategy now. And it can feel, not that it's ever too late, but it can feel like that. It can feel like, oh my gosh, I have fewer choices. More people are married because my dating strategy was just to kind of like have fun and but I think it's really, I like to check that idea of like checking in with yourself and saying, okay, what's my long-term game here? What's my goal? If my goal is to get married and I want to be married in, the next 5 years, I actually have to start acting like it now.
Yeah.
Like there's a long
Mhm.
road ahead of you. And
Being able to vocalize that too, I think we talked about, back when I was dating like years and years ago, I was never afraid on a first date to say like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I don't put the pressure on this person of like, oh, you have
right.
to, do this and do this right now. But these are my long-term goals of what I want for my life. I want to be married. I want to have kids. Like that is part of my dream. And when you vocalize that to someone, you kind of give them the opportunity again to step up to the plate and be like, oh, that's actually what I want as well.
Yes.
Or they're going to show you signs, right, that they're just like not that
And
person.
I think we're conditioned though to be like, oh, I don't want to scare them off, right? Like I'm not going to say those things because I
Yeah.
don't want to scare them off. But in reality, if they're your person, they're going to rise to the occasion and be
Totally.
like, me too.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean,
not that we have to go and get married right now and have babies, but at least you're in an agreement. You're like, oh, we're on the same path. Okay.
and we're going to put this time and energy in together to work towards that goal. And I think
Right.
that's the idea too. And I think, talking to my clients on a daily basis, I think the thing I'm always trying to tell them is think of that long-term goal
Mm-hmm.
and really be present with that and write things down and write goals down that you have about yourself. And then also the things that you want in a partner, those qualities in a partner that you want. Because then when you are in that 6-month relationship, that year mark, that year and a half mark, where you kind of have to take that next step of like, okay, it's been a year and a half now. Like, are we putting a ring on it or are we not? Right. I have a friend that's been like in a 5-year relationship and like he has been dragging his heels. And I'm like, let's have the conversation, right, of like, what's that look like ultimatum question, right? And I don't love the ultimatum idea, but it is like she wants to be married and she wants to have kids. And it's getting to that point now where it's like, you either got to, make the decision of, hey, we're going to do this, or you got to leave him and move on and go find someone else, which can be scary.
Somebody who says hell yes to you.
Yeah,
Right.
that's like, I want to put a ring on your finger. I want to make your dreams come true.
Mm.
That's such a beautiful thing in a relationship, right? And I think that comes with compromise, right? And I think we all want different things. And we all are kind of, on this hamster wheel sometimes of moving so fast that when you take a moment to sit down and just write things down, like, these are what I want and this is what I want in a partner, you'll start to see those things in other people, right? And then I think also then you vocalize those things to your partner that you're dating for a year and a half or 2 years of like, hey, these are the things that are really working for us.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that aren't working for us. And then are we going to make that next step to really like do this life together, or are we going to step away?
Right.
And I think that's the scary thing that I think a lot of people deal with is that like commitment. And I think commitment issues are really real now. We talk about in 2024 because of the dating apps and because it's always like there's always looking for the next best thing.
Right.
rather than settling down with someone and like having that beautiful marriage like my grandparents had, right?
Yeah.
Like we can always go try to find someone that's more this and more that, or richer, or or sexy, or more hardworking, but it's also really beautiful to really appreciate your partner for who they are and what they bring to the table,
Mm-hmm.
and like living in that moment.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for coming on to the podcast
Thanks for
today. This
having
has been
us.
such a
Thank
fun
you.
moment, for us, and I've been getting so much good feedback from our listeners. So thank you guys for listening in. We're gonna continue on with this podcast. Keep it rolling.
Go Bills.
Let's
Go Bills today. Go
go.
Bills. So thank you so much for tuning in today. The Hitchman Podcast. Love, relationships, and matchmaking. Over and out.
Bye.
Bye bye.